Hello everybody, welcome. Thanks for coming along to the Making 3D Cell seminar this afternoon. My name's Danny Edwards, I'm the editor of Shots, and I'm joined today by three experts in the field. Starting on my nearest left, we have Luke Beauchamp, who's the managing director and executive producer at production company Compendium, which has a specialist division for stereoscopic 3D commercials. Which has shot commercials for clients such as Samsung, Sony and Microsoft. Next to Luke, we have James Stewart, who's the founder of and director at Geneva Film Company, an experienced 3D filmmaker who has shot commercials, 3D commercials for brands including Lexus, Toyota and Sprint. And on the end there is Joe Evea, Evea, I think, have I pronounced that? Evea, sorry Joe, who's the commercial director at cinema advertising company Digital Cinema Media. So, quick bit of housekeeping, I guess. The way that we're going to play the seminar today is we're going to show some work to you. So 3 individual pieces, individual reels, at sections throughout the talk, starting with Luke, then Joe, and then James. And we're going to talk about stuff, topics and themes around 3D in between those. And then about sort of 10 minutes before the end of the seminar, roughly speaking, we'll open the floor up to questions from you guys. So bear in mind any questions that you want to ask, anything that maybe we didn't cover or stuff you want to go into a bit more detail about, feel free to ask that at the end. And I think that covers it. So I think first of all we'd like to show Compendium's reel, please. So glasses on, I guess. Okay, so before we kind of go on to talk a bit later on about the kind of creative aspects of 3D, creative applications and why people should use it, I want to explore a little bit about some of its kind of current limitations, I guess you would say. So, and I want to start with access to. So Luke, at the moment, access to 3D in the home is pretty limited, I would say. I don't know if you would agree. I just wondered how much that impacts on why clients do or don't use 3D.
It's certainly a major consideration for clients. Obviously, with the Sky 3D channel, it's a premium package. 3D is perceived by many people as a premium product, but as the distribution medium grows, the price is coming down, the content improves in quality, then I think that clients will see the added value of having, great creative content sitting alongside great longer form content which consumers want to see. Why not have your brand associated with a great piece of work? I mean, some of the stuff that Sky 3D are producing at the moment, Inside the Mind of Leonardo, the Galapagos, all that sort of stuff, is just, it's beautiful, beautiful imagery and it's great narrative, and therefore I think advertisers should be considering wanting to be associated with that. So,
and James, I mean, do you think that then it's a question of just getting people's attention about 3D and kind of educating them to the benefits of having 3D in their home and the applications of it rather than the content itself?
Yeah, I think so. I think that overwhelmingly when people see 3D, they love it. They see it, they go, wow, this is really great. I mean, we see that in the movies. And the work we've done for clients, they love 3D. Getting them to enjoy it when it's been produced is easy. Getting them there is hard. There is a business case in cinema, which you'll hear about, that does work. There's a captive audience. There's a model that says 3D movie, 3D commercials before it. I'm in Toronto, Canada, and we do a lot of work in the US. So there's a model that says 3D commercials in cinema makes sense. TV is another story. So until there's a significant number of 3D TVs in the marketplace and networks playing on those TVs, it's a fairly hard sell. The way we sell it is cinema first, everything else, in 2D and 3D, everything else. But in North America, there is ESPN has a full-time 3D network, and Discovery, Sony have a full-time Discovery-style network called 3Net. But they don't have a lot of advertising because they can't tell the agency these are the eyeballs you're going to get. Cinema can do that. TV is playing catch-up.
So then, do you think that you're saying that the content is essentially there's a lot of good content, and we were talking just before we came on that the price of technology, 3D TVs are essentially the same price as a kind of high-end 2D TV. So then why at the moment is the take-up sort of not as high as maybe people thought it might be, or is that changing? Do you think it is changing, that people are kind of going to have to when you buy a new TV, it will be a 3D TV.
Yeah, I think it is changing. And if you saw Jim Chapin's talk first thing this morning, he had the numbers, the projection numbers of 3D TVs. And I think it was 2 or 3 years out from now, there will be 60 million, and these are US numbers, 60 million in the homes. And that's a substantial number. And for brands to advertise on television in 3D, they need to have a significant number. But most of the consumer electronics companies will tell you that they're making 3D TVs. And the big TVs are all going to be 3D capable, and they're going to go to 4K, and they're going to go higher resolution. So that's all good for 3D. I believe we're all getting 3D TVs. Not today, it's not the Oprah show, but we're all going to get 3D TVs whether you want it or not. And like surround sound, you can use it or not. And it'll initially be for movies and for appointment television like sports.
Okay.
Yeah. I think also something that Ang Lee touched upon. We went from silent movies to sound, we went from black and white to colour, we went from SD to HD. Now 3D is another technical evolution. It's a creative layer which is being either led or held back by technology as it changes. When we first started 2 or 3 years ago shooting, the rigs were much bigger, it took longer to align the cameras, they didn't sync as well, the workflow wasn't as good. So as we learn, the process is more efficient, less expensive, and the content is becoming better. So I think, as early adopters, I think we're in a really good place to bring everybody else into the fold and just say, look, it is, as James says, it's more enjoyable to watch. And I think, you found that with your audiences, haven't you?
We have, yeah. And I think as well, with that home viewing, it's when they're talking about removing the glasses from that experience, I think that will make a big difference to uptake. It's a bit like HD. When it first comes out, people think, right, it's going to, it's alien to us, and it's going to take a long time to be adopted broadly. But once you get distribution, once you remove that kind of effort of buying the glasses, putting the glasses on, I think you're going to find that it becomes more universal and then more accepted, and that's going to lead to, more people watching it, and therefore more advertisers wanting to be a part of it, because we know that it works from an advertising point of view.
So it's still very much an early technology that's still kind of evolving, and people have yet to really kind of get to grips with it, I suppose, in technological and kind of creative senses.
Yeah, I mean, advertising, having been a 2D commercial producer for 20 odd years, it's great to be able to tell a story in 30 seconds and have moments of impact, and to have another layer of creativity to do that is even more exciting. People concentrate on a 30-second ad because they think it's going to be a good story, and if you can make that even better by using 3D, then it adds value to the brand. And also captive audiences in Sky 3D, football in pubs. You've got probably a 18 to 40-year-old primary audience, probably skewed 60-40 male. Brands have got a great opportunity to get in front of a core audience there.
Sorry.
There's definitely an opportunity. It's just a matter of getting creative agencies involved and getting brands to say they want to do it in 3D.
And consumers demanding it.
Yeah. So you touched on Sky there, Luke. So Sky announced recently, last month, I think, that they're going to kind of open up their Sky 3D channel, so that it's more genre specific. You can kind of choose sports, or you can subscribe to movies or entertainment rather than just the whole package. And do you think that will make a difference? I think they said something like 4.5 million eyeballs potentially extra will kind of take up 3D. And
I think anything that brings down the cost to the consumer to watch 3D has got to be a good thing. Yeah. And it's a balancing act, isn't it? For them as a business, do they drop the revenue from subscribers but increase revenue from advertising? I would suggest that would probably be, from an advertising background, I would prefer that to be the route, because I think at the moment it's a barrier. It's a barrier for a lot of people to turn on their TVs to 3D.
Okay. Another quick bit of audience interaction. How many people here have a 3D TV? Quite a few, actually. Yeah. Okay.
How many have actually watched 3D on it?
It's the key question, I suppose.
They have the glasses.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's access for consumers, for people in their homes and wanting TV. But what about clients? I mean, clients, there's an expectation that 3D commercial making is more expensive. Well, it is more expensive. But and do you think that is one of the problems that they have, in that there's at the moment a low uptake of consumers watching it, and they're paying more money for something that might be seen by fewer people?
From a TV commercial point of view, I think absolutely. Marketing director says, I've got X amount to spend. I need to hit as many eyeballs as I can. A lot of the creative agencies don't understand 3D perhaps in the way that we would hope they will in a few years' time. I think cinema advertising is probably more mature, and we'll probably talk about that in a moment. But from a 2D versus 3D, client says, well, it's going to cost me an extra 40%, it's going to take me 3 times as long, I'm not going to get anybody to watch it, as opposed to drilling down into the real fact is, yeah, it probably will cost you 10% more, and it will take you a little bit longer, but along with your 3D deliverable, you will get a 2D. And they, what? And a lot of clients don't even understand the fact that when you're shooting 3D, you will have a 2D deliverable as well. And all the VFX can normally be transposed across because the edit will stay the same. So they are getting a lot of bang for their buck to use that.
So Judge, I mean, is it an education thing again? You know, we talked about the consumers kind of being educated as to the benefits of 3D. Is it a similar situation for the clients of what they can get out of it and what it can deliver for them?
Yeah, 100%. I think from a cinema point of view, well, there's two things really. I think cinema's obviously gone digital recently, and it's meant that actually it's easier to get your TV ads onto the big screen. So therefore, there's a bit of an issue around clients not wanting to invest in cinema-specific creative, and that obviously has an impact on 3D. And I think it's just changing that perception to say it works. It drives recall, it drives return on investment, it's worth the investment. But that takes time. And in cinema, we don't necessarily have a governing body like with TV and the internet, like the IB and Thinkbox, who can do that for us. So as the sales house, it's our job to get around to see as many clients as possible and educate them about that. But at the minute, I believe it's still seen as a niche. It's nice to have, and it works when it's done specifically for the cinema, but it's not really got that broad cut through yet, because there's still that misconception that it's hugely expensive, it's time consuming, and is it really worth the effort?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time with our clients explaining to them exactly that it's not that much more expensive. You know, it can be, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't take that much longer to produce it. This is what we tell them. And the impact is huge for a relatively small investment, whether you're shooting live action that's 10 or 20% more, or converting something, or doing something experiential that is sort of a hybrid of different technologies. The impact, and the studies that show the impact, is 20% higher in viewer retention and desire to buy the product and ad recall, and you're getting an incredible bump in all those categories that they study just for being in 3D with the same content, whether it's converted or live action. And so there's a compelling argument, and as Luke pointed out, that they never seem to, doesn't dawn on them that they're getting 2D as well. So we've pitched it typically as, you know, you launch it in cinema, it's in 3D, you get the press release, you get the, you know, your brand has going to the next dimension, or whatever the pun is. They get that out there, and then of course it plays in 2D in cinema, and 2D on TV, and 2D on web, and 2D viral, and tablet and mobile, and all that stuff. So it's, you know, they still like the wow, and every client that we've sort of taken into 3D, they've never regretted it, they've never thought it was too expensive. They've always thought, wow, that was fantastic.
Yeah, we're beginning to get a bit more cut through now. I think in this age where everything is increasingly being edited, the way you consume, you know, adverts as well as content, and there's just something really compelling about saying to an advertiser, you've got an audience who are going to lean forward in a dark room, lean forward and put a pair of glasses on and sit and watch your advert with no other distractions. There just isn't that opportunity anywhere else, and that's beginning to cut through more in this day and age than it has done in the last few years. So I think that will continue.
I think also brands can use 3D to be part of a campaign. So in the showreel that you just saw, there was the sort of George Clooney lookalike commercial which was shot for Creative Land Asia for India for the Audi limousine, the Audi A4 limousine. And it was all about the back of the car, you know, because if you can afford an Audi 4 limousine in India, you probably don't drive it yourself. But the way that Audi engaged with their consumers was they sent out invitations to a screening in a beautifully bound presentation with a pair of glasses. It was a prestigious event, and it was done as a whole marketing exercise. And they came in thinking they were going to watch a movie, and they were just shown the Audi ad. And then there was then there was a Q&A, and they brought the car into the foyer and people came in. And it was very, very clever. So, it's just that wow factor that you can get across the line.
So it sounds like, from what the three of you are saying, that it's almost a time thing. It's just taken a while, because 3D's been around. Well, it's been around for a long time, but in its kind of newest iteration, it's been a few years still. But it's just taking that time for it to kind of cut through, as Joe says, and for people to kind of be aware of its applications and its the reasons for using it. So do you feel that that time now has come, that 3D is kind of being much more considered?
It's still at toddler stage.
Right.
It's finding its way. A few happy accidents, some really happy moments. A lot of the time, you're thinking it's really frustrating, but it is maturing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for sure. After Avatar, there was a lot of interest. And then, unfortunately, I don't think the movie industry really supported it with great 3D films post-Avatar. And then, with Hugo, there was another bunch of interest. This summer, there is more interest now, because there's a great lineup of, in North America at least, a great lineup of almost weekly 3D blockbusters, starting right now. Pretty well every week or two there's a big 3D film. So that's the kind of thing that gets people's attention. And I also found that getting grown-ups like our clients into the cinema to see grown-up movies really helps the pitch. They all saw Avatar, so it dawned on them, even though there had been 15 other 3D films before Avatar. Unless they have kids, they weren't really aware of 3D films. I'm talking creative directors and and CMOs and decision makers at a brand. So the more grown-up movies like even Pina and Cave of Forgotten Dreams and these more indie films actually kept the conversation going. You look around the cinema, there's nobody under 30 in the cinema, and films like Great Gatsby, and hopefully Gravity, these kinds of films get them thinking about 3D, even though in the end they want to advertise in front of Iron Man 3, because that's where the numbers are.
Yeah.
But it gets them thinking, wow, these directors like Scorsese and Ang Lee, Life of Pi we did a client screening for Life of Pi. People loved it.
We did.
It dawned on them. They're like, wow, this is a whole new language. You're like, yeah, it's kind of like what we've been talking about since Avatar.
It makes your job a lot easier with that kind of content. I think you're right. I think there was a number of, after Avatar, it felt a bit like some movies just jumped on the bandwagon. And I think that really did damage 3D, and it devalued it, particularly in client size. And I think occasionally it can be quite a divisive subject as well. You do tend to find people who say, I love 3D, or they really hate it. And when you talk to a client or an advertiser that thinks like that, it's when you haven't got the product to support it, it makes it much more difficult to convince them to advertise. But I agree. I mean, Life of Pi, The Hobbit, fantastic films in 3D.
Is someone going to string? When are you guys going to string up Danny Boyle?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
But again, The Hobbit opened up another conversation, because there was another technological advance with the 48 frames. Did that really work? So again, we've just got to 3D and got people understanding that, some great 3D coming out, and then we've got 3D and 48 frames. Is that the way to go? So if we don't know on this side as producers and distributors of content, sometimes it's even harder to reassure the client that this is the way to go.
Okay. So that seems like a good point to sort of watch the next reel, if we can. So I think this is DCM's reel. It seems fair to say that cinema has kind of embraced 3D, so obviously the films, but would you say that it's true that advertising has embraced 3D more so than kind of home viewing 3D commercials?
I think more so than home viewing, yeah. It hasn't embraced it enough, in my opinion, but I think you can see from some of those ads, when it does, it can be hugely impactful. I think what you've got with the cinema is that captive audience, and you can use that to your advantage, which is what Rice Krispies did. I showed the ad to a bunch of kids recently, and they all had their hands up, and they're all talking to each other after it. And you don't really, that's what all advertisers want to do. They're looking for that kind of cut through. They're looking to tell a story. They're looking to engage the audience, and that's what 3D can enable them to do. But not enough advertisers are doing that, and I think partly that's due to the product, i.e. the film product, and partly that's due to the preconceptions that it is hugely expensive. And I don't think enough of them know or can appreciate the value. And to James's point earlier, I think it's also about getting clients in the cinema to see that And that, you know, that's easier said than done.
Do you feel as well that because of how cinema is, it's a communal viewing experience, it feels like an event, and you put the glasses on, like you say, you can lean forward and see it. Is that why cinema feels it's got a bit of a gap between it and TV commercial advertising on 3D, because the home sort of viewing experience isn't quite the same?
For me,
Anyone?
I think it's mostly the eyeballs still.
Yeah, the
Like, I think that people like the home viewing experience. Those of you who have 3D TVs, it's fantastic. It's just a matter of convincing them that there is a model that says you will get X number of eyeballs if you advertise. The last 4 years, we've shown 3D at the Cannes Lions Advertising Festival, and it's always sold out. We always turn away tons of people, and people love it. So that's very encouraging, because we know we have a medium that people enjoy looking at, and we know it's impactful, and we know that certain brands who have done it have really felt the impact. But typically it's a consumer electronics company selling something in 3D, or it's the companies that are typically in cinema, which are telecom, automotive, packaged goods. These are pretty much the same worldwide. But they're also the brands that are into visual storytelling. They want to tell a story that's visual. It's going to be on a big screen. It's going to be in a cinema, and they're going to do a big surround sound mix. They're going to do a nice color grade, and guess what? If they do 3D, they get even bigger impact, and that's something they understand.
Yeah. And do you think we've moved away from the kind of gimmicky aspect of 3D? Often you talk to people, maybe naysayers to 3D, just saying it's a bit of a gimmick. It's kind of fingers pointing and arrows coming out of the screen. But it feels like there is a much more creative application to that now, and there are stereographers and people of that ilk who use it much better and more fully rounded.
I think for advertising, there is a right to use impact.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got a short amount of time to tell a story. I mean, if you didn't have those Rice Krispie squares coming out of the screen at you, in Kate Moss, if you didn't have the diamonds coming at you, you'd probably feel a little bit cheated, because it's an intense period of time, and you've got to take something away, and the brand has a right to tease you with that and put the brand forward.
Yeah, and generally the clients want more 3D, and what they mean when they say more 3D is they mean more negative parallax, more stuff off the screen, because they perceive there's value in that. The more there is off the screen, the more value it is. I think if you did those spots and they were more behind the screen, the client would go, that's okay. But because they're short, they're 60s or 30s, the eye strain risk is not as great. I mean, you can't have bad 3D, but you can have things coming right off the screen and then cut off, and you're not really going to snap people's eyeballs the way you would in a film, a longer form project where you're doing it constantly. After 5 minutes, people go, yeah, okay, we get it. They're a little irritated by it. In the commercial, you can be as aggressive as you want, it seems, and as long as the 3D is set up properly to not twist people's eyeballs, people like it.
So is there a point that we maybe use the word gimmick wrong? We're using it pejoratively, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
Yeah, I think it's every advertiser's dream to have their brand sort of floating above an audience in the cinema.
Yeah.
But I do think there's an element of management still. I think that the powerful of the ads that we just saw were ones that actually sort of immersed you a bit and told you a bit of a story. I've seen some ads where it's literally just been the product and a bit of a voiceover, and that's all right for 30 seconds, but I'm not sure if that has the same impact as something that does kind of weave a bit of a tale that you can take away with you.
I mean, the Sony spot that we worked on was about the history of television. So it starts off with the guy outside the vintage shop, and it goes right through to the contemporary. And we used 3D as a narrative arc. So we had very subtle 3D towards the beginning of it, and we built it up towards the end. It was stronger because we were telling a story over time, and the audience got that, and that was what was right for the client.
Okay.
Yeah, and advertising doesn't seem to be afraid of gimmicks. They seem to like gimmicks. What is the gimmick? What's the hook? And I don't think 3D is a gimmick anymore than Dolby Atmos is and all these new technologies that have a bigger impact on the audience. They're gimmicks or they're tools, whatever you want to call them. I mean, it's filmmaking. It's all one big storytelling gimmick.
Okay, I'm conscious of time, so and we're having questions from the audience. So if we can watch the third reel, please, and then we'll kind of crack on. James, what does 3D give a director that not using 3D? You're not. What does it give extra than 2D? I guess is my question.
Well, I think the first project I did in 3D was in 2004, so it was very early, and I fell in love with it really early, and I just found it was really sort of creatively liberating to have that much volume in a shot, and to make you think about light and shadow and space in a completely different way. And I think, like Ang Lee was saying today, directors who work in 3D almost all fall in love with it. And I still shoot a lot of flatties, as I call them. We still shoot 2D as well. But I always find it very interesting when I'm shooting 2D. I often have this realization: is that it? Like, you just turn the camera on and you point it. You don't have a depth script. You're not thinking about all the volume, because in 2D we spent so much time in the history of filmmaking hiding depth. Using long lenses, compressing it. Shooting the actors like this, and knocking out the background, and cheating. We're running out of light. Well, you know what? We'll blow out the background. We'll do something. And 3D is so much less forgiving, because it lends itself to, big wide crane shots and things like that. I mean, you still shoot the emotion tight on the actor, and you give up 3D to do that. But it's just so much more interesting in 3D to look around and see the volume and the space in a shot. And I always find it very interesting. Like Christopher Nolan hates 3D, doesn't want to work in 3D, and I find these directors that are afraid of 3D so interesting. It's like DPs who will only shoot film. I respect their incredible craft, but they don't understand how good digital is. They're categorically saying, I won't shoot digital because I love film. I like the way it smells. I like film. And that's wonderful. But Scorsese had never shot digital until he did Hugo. And his editor had never cut on an Avid until she did Hugo. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine working on a Steenbeck in this day and age? And I respect their craft, because their work is fantastic, but it's totally illogical. And so directors who work in 3D typically go, oh my God, this is great. They react the way Ang Lee did. They react the way Scorsese did. And you're not going to tell these guys, how to redo how they tell stories. But they love 3D. And so it's interesting as a director. You live and die by your reel. You live and die by your last show. And I've put myself out there as a director who likes 3D. And fortunately, in the last, whatever it is, it's been 8 years. The list of directors is growing and growing and growing and growing. In the commercial world, it hasn't grown that much, but in the feature film world, you look at the directors who like 3D and the directors who hate 3D, and slowly J.J. Abrams is moving over, and a lot of the other guys who thought 3D was not their style, they're slowly moving over.
Okay, and so Joe, obviously there's lots of creative choices for directors and creative opportunities, but then why should a brand decide that 3D is the way to go rather than a pure 2D commercial?
I think, well, from a cinema point of view, I think well, there's two things. One, I think you should shoot for cinema in the first place, because that's where you maximise your impact. It's a unique environment, so you should make the most of that. And then when you're in the cinema, if the film is 3D, if you have an audience there who are looking forward to an event, who already have their glasses on, it makes absolute sense to make the most of that impact by shooting in 3D. We know it works, we know it drives recall. Crucially, we know it drives return on investments. So, it makes sense to do it, and it's also not that cost prohibitive anymore.
And how important is it to make sure that you've got, we spoke before about stereographers and having people on set that really know what they're doing. You can't just pitch up and have a director with the 3D cameras and hope for the best. It's
bad 3Ds, like bad sound, bad lighting, bad acting, bad directing. It's all part of the creative the creative thing that holds it all together. A good stereographer will make the whole experience for the audience more enjoyable. A good stereographer who can collaborate with a good director and a good DP is going to make the best kind of work.
Yeah, I find in terms of the production process, fortunately commercials still are relatively well budgeted compared to indie films and a lot of other parts of the filmmaking process. So it's not that much more expensive to shoot in 3D. Yes, you're adding a camera system that has 2 cameras. Yes, you're adding a couple of crew members and a little bit of post, but it's not that much more complicated, time-consuming, and expensive, and that's how we pitch it. And you know, they say, how much longer does it take? Well, if you have the right system, it takes 0% longer. Because you can shoot live 3D sports, that is 0% longer. If you don't spend money and you have a manual rig, it might take longer. But if you have a fully automated you know, system, it's very fast. You know, we shot a theme park film this past summer. We used a small rig with red epics, and we put on a Steadicam, put on a jib. You know, did not have any alignment issues ever. So it can be done, and fortunately the commercial world, there are these buckets of money, and you know, do you want a helicopter? Do you want a techno crane? You know, what do you need to? Do you want a location that's a castle that's really expensive? There's all these buckets, and it's just a matter of moving the money around, and guess what? 3D is not a big piece of that pie. You know, the camera systems are relatively not that expensive compared to your celebrity talent, compared to your celebrity composer. I mean, there's a lot of big buckets. Okay. And where indie cinema, it's difficult. It's more difficult. But fortunately, in the commercial world, when people say, we don't want to spend $10,000 more, what are you talking about? Yeah. Like, okay, the media buy is $3 million. You don't want to spend $30,000 to convert your commercial? Like, that's a rounding error in your business.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm conscious we're running out of time now. So I just wondered if anyone's got any questions for the panel. There's a guy just there at the front, or second row from the guy. Oh, you probably can't see me, can you?
Hi. I think some of your show reels were fantastic, so well done, guys.
Thank you.
One thing I'm interested in is we've just been limiting ourselves to talking about showing that in cinemas, though. But surely for advertising, you've got a much broader package of things that you can offer. So if you're shooting a movie in 3D, then you can have a lenticular front cover on your Blu-ray. You can give out, you know, front covers on the copy of Film Magazine. There's all kinds of things that then become things that people will hang on to. So the longevity of that spend for the brand must be considerably greater by employing 3D the whole way through that marketing plan, if you like, rather than just a single one thing and it's done. Can you just comment on that?
Well, I mean, absolutely. It's very, very valid. Again, that's kind of what I was touching upon with the Creative Land Asia project, which was the Audi limousine thing, where they targeted their audience with a product, with a prop, and invited them to be part of an experience. I think, you know, the lenticular screens and the giveaways is another really good example. To continue the brand messaging for 3D, it's probably quite a big ask in this economic climate because of the...
So one other very good example I've seen is an advertiser that did one using glasses-free screens in the front of shops.
Auto-stereoscopic screens, yeah, absolutely. Certainly for makeup, some of the makeup brands have done that, where you've got point of sale, which is auto-stereoscopic. Our audiences are becoming so savvy now, it doesn't really matter how you give them a message, doesn't matter where they are. One of the things that somebody mentioned in the session this morning was you've got 8-year-olds who are used to watching 3D in cinema, so when they're 10, 12, 15, they'll expect to be watching stuff in 3D, but they're also the generation that are looking stuff on YouTube, on their mobile phones. Mm-hmm. So they are discerning, but also they don't care where the messages come from. So I think for 3D, because it is still a premium, if I can call it that, then I think it has to be presented in a premium way. That will become broader. The touch points will become more, you know, with mobiles and tablets and all that kind of stuff. So I think the brand messaging through that will happen. And also, you know, YouTube, you've got a 3D channel on YouTube, so you can watch stuff. Okay, it might be anaglyph, but we do put side-by-side movies up there if anybody wants to look at our YouTube.
I think
demo.
we've got, sorry, I think we've got time maybe quickly for one more question. We're running out of time. So I thought I saw one more hand, or no? Yeah, oh yeah, someone just there.
Yeah, hello. I'm Galien Chanel-Quercy from Cap Productions in France. We did and produced and directed the Harry Bohad that we saw earlier. So we've been doing involved in advertising and 3D for quite a while now, and what it appears to me that budget has never really been an issue that much, but it was more the will of the agencies, advertising agencies, to push the 3D medium towards their clients more than us as production companies or filmmakers, because I think we all agree in this room that, yeah, when do we do more 3D films?
Yeah.
But it's, you know, we can notice that today there's nobody from an agency or a client, which in the end are the one who say, yes, let's do it, and even more so the agencies would try to convince the client that it is worthwhile. I don't know if that's something you face yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, part of my day-to-day business is going around and talking to agencies and talking to them about the opportunities with their brands, talking to Sky about their brands. You know, that Joe does the same.
Yeah, we've restructured our team recently so that we have more people seeing clients direct and also a separate team looking after creative agencies, because that's where the real job needs to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, we do the same. We spend a lot of time doing, you know, for the last couple of years, we've gone around to agencies. We do sort of 3D 101. The advertising industry has changed a lot in the last few years in that getting in to see a client in an agency is very difficult because everything is online and send us a link, send us a link. We don't want to have lunch. Don't bring in lunch. Don't come see us. Send us a link because we can ignore that a lot easier. And 3D I found was actually a way back in the door. We say, we're bringing in 3D. You don't have it. You can't see it online. We're going to bring in a TV, or we're going to bring your team down to a cinema and give you the experience of 3D under the guise of education, under the guise of we're going to tell you what you need to know to tell your clients. And the reception was quite good. How many spots that translates into is another story. But certainly, you know, I think we all did that, and we all went around and educated and told people it's great 3D. We have client screenings whenever there's a great film. That's for grown-ups. We try to have a client screening and get 150, 200 people in the room to say, by the way, here's our commercials before the movie, and then here's this great movie. And also talking to the media agencies, you know, sell it so that the creative agencies need to produce it and, you know, work all the angles, and even tablets, phones, auto stereo, digital signage, you know, all those pieces. You know, I don't know anything about those last bunch, but we certainly say, we'll hook you up. If you want to do 3D content, you know, yes, it can go on digital signage. Yes, it can go on phones and tablets. We do a lot of work for pharmaceutical companies who fortunately have a lot of money and spend a lot of money. And we've done dome cinema experiences for them that are essentially medical illustration. But they like the idea of auto stereo tablets. You know, great, give us a bunch of those. You know, so every client is different and their needs are different.
So I'm being frantically waved at, I'm afraid. So that's all we've got time for. So thank you to Luke, thanks to James, thanks to Joe, thanks guys for turning up.